All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Perry, Georgia, here at the FMCA Convention. We are joined by Chris with Cummins. And Chris, could you just kind of introduce yourself and tell us what your role at Cummins is?
Sure. My name is Chris Crowell. I work for Cummins in Columbus, Indiana. That's our headquarters.
Okay.
Been with Cummins about 35 years. The last looked after our engine business for fire trucks and recreational vehicles.
35 years. You just started.
Just started. Yeah.
It's going well?
They haven't discovered me yet. Oh, we're on camera.
So can you tell us briefly, what does Cummins do for RVers?
So the big thing that we like to say is that we power the RV lifestyle. So whether you need a push, like with a diesel pusher, with Ram pickup and a Cummins, or you need power while you're at your campsite through our Cummins owned generators.
Okay.
Very cool. And about how many locations are there for Cummins, like service centers across the U.S.?
Yeah, it's a good question. So in the U.S. and Canada, we have 5,500 locations. Now, not all of them will work on RVs. I would say that number's closer to about 2,000. And then we actually have, like, I would call 200 specialists that just focus on Cummins engines and generators. We call those our Cummins sales and service locations. And of those, we actually have about 70 of them that will actually go beyond just the engine and generator, but do chassis work, do work in the house, and have a lot of amenities that cater to the RVer.
Okay. Now, what chassis are you guys on?
That's a great question. So today, there's primarily 5 chassis that we power in the RV business. So on the Class A's, it would be Freightliner Custom chassis. Okay. We also work with the Shift Group with the Spartan RV chassis, Tiffin, who make their own Power Glide chassis. Newell makes a Class A chassis. And then also on the Class C's, Freightliner again, and Navistar. So those are the primary players from a chassis perspective.
They would be the Super C's.
Super C's, yes, sir.
Okay. I always hear that they have like the best ride out of everybody is the Super C. I don't know if it's true, but that's what people tell me that have them. They're like, you guys don't know how good we have it over here.
So yeah, I think one of the best parts, and it's more a function of the chassis design, is you're riding on a cushion of air, right? Yeah. You're on an air ride suspension. So it's the same stuff that if you're moving your furniture, you want an air ride trailer to haul your, valuable things. And you're in the same situation, Class A or some of the Class C's.
And does the I'm sorry, I'm really ignorant about engines. So does the chassis determine which Cummins engine goes on it, or how does the engine matching with the chassis and the RV itself go?
It's actually a good question. So we work very closely with each one of those companies. The size of the engine sort of determined by the weight of the coach and how much performance is required. Okay. So like in some of these larger coaches that may weigh north of 35,000 pounds, we have engines that go up to 605 horsepower. Wow. Okay. And then even on some of the smallest ones, we'll go down to, say, 200 horsepower.
Oh, okay. And torque changes for them as well?
Right. So kind of from a lineup perspective, we have our 6.7. So a lot of people are familiar with the Ram pickup, that 6.7 liter displacement. Mm-hmm. That would be our entry level diesel engine for an RV. Okay. And that will go anywhere from 300 to 360 horsepower, but up to 800 foot-pounds of torque. So torque does matter. That's what gets things rolling and keeps your speed as you're going up a grade. Then we move up to a 9-liter engine. We call that the L9, and those are typically 360 to 450 horsepower, but a significant jump in torque, up to 1,250 foot-pounds of torque. Oh, wow. So 50% more torque, and you can feel that.
Yeah, I bet.
Yeah. So then we move up to a 12-liter, only one rating of that one. That's called the X12. So that's 500 horsepower, 1,700 foot-pounds of torque. And then the big boy is the X15, 605 horsepower, 1,950 foot-pounds of torque. it doesn't believe that hills exist.
Yeah, I was going to say, you should go up a hill. No problem.
I didn't realize you guys had that many different lineup of engines that's just for the RV line.
Right, just for the RV line. I would say overall, globally with Cummins, we have about 180 different models.
Get out of here.
Really?
Yeah, so all the way up to 3,500 horsepower engines that would be about the size of an RV.
Wow.
And then how often do you guys, sorry, Sean.
No.
How often do you guys release like a new engine for the RV industry? Or are these like staple engines and they're just kind of what they are? Or?
So generally what drives new engine development are emissions changes. For example, as you go back in 2007, that was a change by the EPA, 2010, 2013, 2017, 2021. So we're constantly having to evolve the engines to meet those tighter standards. But we also bring in customers and talk to them about what their specific market. So for example, that 605 horsepower engine, these big 18 wheelers that are rolling out there, that's the X15 is the most popular engine for heavy duty trucks. So we'll take something very similar to that and install it in an RV.
Oh,
So something like the addition of DEF, would that change some of the engineering in the engine build?
Yeah, it's a good question. Was a functional reduction in oxides of nitrogen. So generally these with a yellow haze, they try to control that to improve air quality. So by using DEF, we were actually able to tune the engines more like they were before all the emissions equipment. So we can inject the DEF in the exhaust system, and it actually cleans the emissions in the exhaust system and gives us a lot more flexibility on tuning the engine.
So the DEF doesn't actually interact with the engine per se, but the tuning of the engine is affected greatly by the DEF.
Correct. So
Okay.
we have NOx sensors on the exhaust system. So these systems are pretty much closed loop. And if it senses that NOx levels have increased, then we can dose some DEF, diesel exhaust fluid, into the exhaust and reduce those oxides of nitrogen. So basically all you're getting out of the tailpipe these days is carbon dioxide, water, and nitrogen, which we're breathing a large percentage of right now.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So you said a lot of changes are determined by EPA standards and things like that. Do they give you guys a little bit of like warning? And I mean, how do they spring these changes on you?
Yeah, so sometimes it's a little shocking, but several years ago, the EPA came out with an approach where they say we need to give engine manufacturers at least 3 years to develop a new product. Okay. So as soon as those standards are put in place, then we're going to work. So we've been working on 2024 product for about 2 years now.
Okay.
We've already started work on our EPA 2027 product because that rule just became final recently. January's actually January timeframe.
So they give you a little bit of time because R&D is just very time consuming.
It's incredible. We'll spend $1.5 billion to bring this next generation of products to market.
You said that with a B?
With a B.
Wow.
With a B.
Wow, that's an expensive.
Yeah,
endeavor.
that's even more than Brazilian dollars.
Wow. And so when you guys build a new engine, what's the testing process? Is it all done in a lab, or do you actually put it out on the road and test it that way as well?
It's a great question. So we'll generally start out in dynos just to start to evolve the technology. We'll end up with thousands of hours in a dyno before we even install the first engine into a test vehicle. We'll then pick anywhere from 20 to 50 different vehicles where we will repower with the newer engine, and we try to pick very diverse applications. So cement mixers, high altitude, high temperature, low altitude, extreme heat. And we will follow and monitor those engines very closely. By the time we're done, we actually joke around that we measure that in the number of trips to the moon. Okay, but
Wow.
It's millions.
Wow.
It's millions.
That's how much you're doing, though.
Yeah, generally 3 to 4 million miles.
So they're pretty well tested before they hit the market.
Absolutely.
I'm curious, does it go through any consumers' hands, like pre-testing wise? Do you hand them out or anything like that?
So those field test vehicles are actually customer
Oh, they
units.
are.
We want to
Oh,
put
okay.
it in real world service,
Wow.
doing the things that they do. So we do find a lot of things, things that customers say, well, that's nice, but it sure would be nice if it did that, or I need this parameter, or I need it to behave differently. Then we can take all that feedback in and work on our tuning.
Okay,
Oh, that's great. We love it when companies do that. Let customers put their hands on it before they actually release it to the public.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of things that can be done by the manufacturer that maybe they don't see it the same way that a customer would. So it's a great benefit to be able to do that.
Absolutely. And we get a ton of great feedback from those customers. We even do things like oil sampling, fuel economy reporting. So these all get an assigned engineer to follow that vehicle so that we get as much learning from that experience as we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long has Cummins been around?
So we were started in 1919, Clessy Cummins.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's over 100 years now, right?
Great.
So it's been very successful for us. The first run wasn't as successful. The very first engine that Clessy released actually was offered in Sears and Roebuck, and it came with a money-back guarantee, and it was an irrigation pump drive.
Okay.
So farmers used it, and then at the end of the irrigation season, they returned them for full credit. Not necessarily the best business model.
That was probably a gasoline engine, not a.
No, so back then, everything was pretty much fuel oil, what they called it, diesel fuel.
Yeah.
Okay. But today we run on a number of different fuels. So anything from obviously diesel, we are developing a gasoline engine at this point. We've run natural gas engines since the 80s, and we're also working on things like hydrogen and propane. So these are exciting technologies, right? All to help toward decarbonization, reduction in greenhouse gas.
That's excellent. Oh, that's great. And currently, where are the engines being built?
So we have plants around the world, probably over 70 different plants. We typically build in the area where we're going to be selling the product. Okay. So it helps with transportation costs and understanding the market, kind of standard emissions. So for the U.S. automotive market, including RVs, fire trucks, over-the-road trucks, our smaller engines, that B6.7 and the L9 are built in Rocky Mount, North Carolina.
Oh, really?
Okay.
The larger engines, the 12 and 15 liter, are built in Jamestown, New York.
Okay.
And then for the Ram pickup, we actually build those in Columbus, Indiana at the headquarters, not in the office building, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, like how often do you go to the factory or the production line? Are you ever in there just to see what's going on? Strong and I always like factory tours and stuff like that. I'm not sure, is that something that you do?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So I'm not there on a regular basis. I actually work out of my home, but I do make it to some of our manufacturing plants. I'd say 3 or 4 times a year.
That's a lot.
I think they like to keep me away because I also like to provide service to customers, and they always check my pockets as I'm leaving. Yeah.
So for people we're here at the FMCA convention, and you guys have a lot of people on site. What do you do at these conventions and rallies for people?
So our number one mission is to help people enjoy what they have. So we mostly educate at these, provide seminars on maintenance and operation. We're answering questions. We'll probably I'll bet yesterday we talked to 300 to 400 people that had questions and just weren't sure about how do I maintain it, or I heard this, is that true? But we're blessed at this show because our local service location out of Forest Park, Georgia, actually sent an army down. So we have 5 technicians here. We've got 3 service riders. We've got 3 parts people. And we're mainly doing that just to make it more convenient for the RV consumer.
So you can do some maintenance stuff right here on site.
Right.
People.
So yeah, exactly. So they've been doing some generator oil changes. If someone has a check engine light, they've gone out and read some of those just to give operational guidance to the customer. Now, obviously, we're not going to do a major repair here on site, But fortunately, our Forest Park, Atlanta operation's only about an hour and 15 minutes away,
Okay.
depending on Atlanta traffic.
And then for anybody, yeah, that's a big difference. And for anybody that's like watching us or listening to us at home and they want it service done, what's the easiest way for them to find a service center? Do you have like a locator device on your website?
It's a great question. Yeah. So you can go to Cummins.com and there will be a locator for parts and service. If you're more of a telephone person, you can call 1-800-CUMMINS. That's a 24/7 number. And the nice part about that is you can interact with an individual to say, okay, what is your product? Or I'm headed this direction. What is the next location on my way?
Nice.
Of the 2,000 different options. So it just gives people a lot of flexibility in making those decisions.
Especially when full time and if you're
absolutely.
living in your RV full time.
Absolutely.
Now, when you guys are also known, besides the power plant, you guys are also known for the generators, onboard generators inside a lot of RVs. How long have you guys been doing that? It's been a long time.
Forever.
Okay.
Yeah, forever. So actually the Onan generators, the Cummins Onan generators were actually installed even before we started seeing a big push for diesel powertrains.
Oh, really?
So they've been around, I should know this, but we've built a couple of million generators for the RV industry. So not only do we do that, the fixed mount that's actually mounted to the coach, but we also have a line of portables.
Oh, I didn't know
that were released the last couple of years. Very quiet, remote start, things like that. The 4500 actually has a suitcase handle, so you can wheel it around pretty easily.
Oh, wow.
And those can be paralleled, so you can tie two 4500s together to get more power and 50 amp plug.
That's plenty of power right there.
There you go. And then the two 2500s, obviously, you could get 5,000 peak.
And the onboard generators, the ones that are, what did you call them?
Fixed mount. So basically they're bolted to the vehicle, so they're staying where they are.
If my RV didn't come with one, can I get one aftermarket installed?
It's a good question. So a lot of the towable units, especially fifth wheels, will come they call it gen ready.
Gen ready,
so it's pre-wired, ready to go. So then you just have to install the generator. In some situations, it might be a little more of a challenge. Like if that is not a gen ready set, you just got a little more work to figure that out to make sure you've got the right airflow, the right cabling, the right fuel supply, et cetera.
But it is something I would be able to get done probably.
Sure.
Through one of your 2,000 service people.
Sure. On the generator side, there's about 600 locations that are signed up as generator dealers, meaning they can file warranty, but there are other locations that can also help with an install.
Okay.
And then going back to those portable ones, Sean, that I did not know that you guys made, where are you selling?
So any of our Cummins sales and service locations, so the 200 and some locations that we have around the country, a good place to get them. I believe you can even buy them online at like shop.cummins.com.
Okay.
But yeah, they're really nice sets.
All right. I'll have to take a look at them. Sorry, I was on jumping with one more question jumping back to engines. I'm just curious, when you guys are working with some of these chassis manufacturers, are you telling them the size of the engine and they're building the chassis around your engine, or is it the other way around? Or are they building the chassis and they're like, all right, now you got to fit your engine in here?
Right. Generally, the chassis folks start first. They own that whole design, but we work with them through every step of the process. So as they select that engine, there's a lot of modeling that happens now with CAD models. So that way you know that it fits ahead of time. So we do a lot of that front end work with them. Even as new models are released, we're working with them. Then as they get the engine installed, we begin to work with them on sizing of the cooling system, the testing process. So we actually go through a full installation quality assessment with every installation that happens. So every Spartan chassis, every Freightliner chassis, and it has to meet certain standards that we have all as an industry come to know that customers expect.
Okay.
Pardon me if I have another dumb question, but
No such thing.
how do you pay? What transmissions do you guys pair with? Is that pretty universal, or do you have only certain transmissions that'll work with your motors?
So each market tends to have their standard. For the RV market, mostly what's behind our engines is Allison 6-speed transmission. Now, When you get outside of that, over the road trucks, a lot of those are going to automated mechanical transmissions.
Yeah.
But I would say we've integrated with hundreds of different transmissions. Size, standard flywheels so that they can adapt to the transmission that they're going into. And then when you go globally, you can imagine that there's a lot of other transmission manufacturers globally. So we try to take all that into consideration. So we'll have hundreds of different options for flywheels and flywheel housings.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it.
To make that work. So yeah, pretty much if it's a standard transmission, we can work with it. Oh no, we lost our sign.
Oh, that's all right. It won't be the last. I have another probably dumb question, but like maybe not aftermarket situations, but gearheads and people that like to tinker with their engines and things like that. Are there different tunings that people can buy? I wouldn't imagine it's a good idea, but I know people like to tinker with engines. They like to change air filters and try to add more horsepower and more. Like, what do you guys say about doing things like that?
So maybe a three-part answer. So just understand when these things are released, a lot of thought went into it. So the sizing of the air filter for the maintenance interval that's recommended, what coolant was selected based on the maintenance intervals and how easy it is to find those replacement coolants. So number one, understand that a lot of work went into that. And so even though there are a lot of aftermarket companies that think that they might have a better bell or whistle, a lot of work went into what we did. So that's probably the first thing.
Okay.
You mentioned chips or tuners. The EPA might consider those not to be a good idea, if you know what I mean. Now, what I will say is we do have different calibrations for different horsepower. So when I mentioned the L9 380, 400, and 450, that's all the same engine hardware, but it has a different calibration.
Okay.
So those are all fully certified calibrations, so we feel comfortable with using those. Plus, they've been tested at those limits so that you'll get reliable service. And then the third thing is we know that there are enthusiasts out there, so people with Land Cruisers or Jeeps. So we actually came up with a crate engine program with a little 2.8 liter engine.
Oh, really?
So you can repower your Jeep. It comes with a lot of the stuff you would need, the harnessing, the engine, drop ship to your place. And then you can work with an installer or buy the mounting adaptations and the cooling system modifications to install it.
That's
so
pretty cool. What year Jeeps?
I don't remember the exact years of the program where it's eligible. It's on our website. Okay. If you just use a browser to say Cummins Repower, it'll pull up the information on the 2.8, how to order it, the specs. So about 161 horsepower and I'm trying to remember the torque, 320 foot-pounds of torque.
Oh, that's great.
So, yeah, so with the Jeep, you might not need to use the first three gears.
So it's kind of like a baby Cummins.
Yeah.
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 2.8. That's a nice size.
Yeah, that's great.
And we've built thousands of those. I mean, in different countries, there's in other countries that engine's actually used in SUVs, different emission standards, et cetera.
Okay.
So this would be for older Jeeps and Land Cruisers. I just don't remember the cutoff year.
So for people that own an RV with a Cummins engine, what's like the number one or two tip you can give them to keep that performance up to par?
I would say number one, come to my seminar tomorrow at 9:00 and we'll go through all the maintenance and operation.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
So I think it's in seminar 1. You can stop by our display here between the two lakes and ask any question you want. We do not have the correct lottery numbers.
Okay.
Just that one's off the table. But you can go to Cummins.com. There are a lot of articles, just interest. For example, we had a big announcement last week about renaming our new power business unit. So we are working on battery electric powertrains. We've already sold hundreds of them into various applications, refuse, mini excavators, buses. So we're working toward the future of battery electric.
Nice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. I think that's all of our questions for today.
Okay.
Chris, unless there's something we missed, you want to add anything before we let you get back to work?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity. I would like to drag this out so I don't have to stand in the display. But no, it's been great. You guys asked great questions, and happy to help whoever else has questions.
All right. I hope we get you back on the show for a full length episode someday.
Okay. Yeah, it'd be great.
All right.
Be
Yeah.
happy to do that.